37 simple Minecraft build hacks. If you're anything like me, then building something that looks good is a difficult problem. So lucky for us, these are the easy to use tricks that'll take any build you make to the next level. And hey, according to the YouTube gods, no one's ever subscribed to the channel using their left pinky. So if you're up to that challenge, point your 5th digit at that red sub button below. It's free and it helps out a ton. Number 1. Every builder loves half slabs, but while these are great, they're not ubiquitous, meaning we're fairly limited in the half steps we can use. Or so you thought. Since if we take after this user, we can actually use beds as a substitute. See, all it takes is placing one of the 16 bed types and then right-clicking it with a debug stick to get something of a colorful slab to use. And sure, the feet might be a giveaway from this angle, but anywhere else, the illusion does the trick. Number 2. Beacons are a sight we're all familiar with, but maybe not like this. Though, even if this seems cursed, the tech to pull it off is surprisingly simple. See, beacons are transparent blocks, meaning beacon beams can pass through other beacons. So if you have the spare blocks on hand, you can make something of a custom beacon in vanilla. And while this does wind up being a pretty expensive facade, the results are definitely unique, and it might be the perfect prank for your next friend's visit. Number 3. With the recent announcement of the upcoming Wild update, Minecraft swamps are set for a lot of change, and with that comes plenty of new plants to see. However, that doesn't mean we can't add in a few of our own. So until they're announced, why not fake it with this cattail creation? All you need to do is place 2 support blocks, lay out your brown candles, and then replace the support with a plant of your choice. And it's definitely a way to take your sugarcane to the next level. Number 4. Minecraft has plenty of ways to show off your gear, and let's be honest, by this point, they're a bit stale. So to upgrade our presentation, we'll have to combine a few methods. And I think this helmet display does just that. See, while others settle for just an armor stand, we can go that extra mile by pushing a couple of these blocks into the entity. And from there, we score a glass case right for showing off your netherite helmet. Number 5. Fences and walls are commonplace in any Minecraft build you visit. And while they're nice enough blocks to use, I think we need to do better. But luckily on Bedrock, that solution is super simple. Over here, it's possible to put different buttons on top of the posts. And while we can't do the same on Java, a bonus tip for there is that by adding string on top of walls, we can make them into columns when we choose to, both of which are useful details. Number 6. Defending your base from mobs is an important subject, but luckily this method lets us keep out the monsters without sacrificing our aesthetic. As it turns out, mobs won't walk over berry bushes in their pathfinding, meaning if we tuck some of these underneath our carpet floor, we can use that to both keep mobs in place and keep them out of your base, which I think is a welcome improvement over these forms of mob proofing. I mean, it's certainly smaller. Number 7. When you're building in Minecraft, scope can be a huge factor for impressing, but just because we're scaling our size doesn't mean we need to scale back the detail. So before you break ground on that mega base, take after this user and alternate between something of a linear pattern to help your walls look good. Because in the end, if you're going to spend the time to lay out this many blocks, you might as well have it look good at any size that you look at it. Number 8. Redstone components are an essential for bringing your builds to life, but while they clearly have their functional use, that's not to discount them on the visual side. And it's stuff like this that proves that they can do both. See, while we're all familiar with pistons for moving our blocks, it turns out by placing a couple like so, we can make a pretty convincing pipe setup as well. And while they aren't nearly as functional as something you'll find in Buildcraft, they do add a great detail to your next industrial base. Number 9. Lanterns make a fantastic decoration for lighting up your base. But that said, they can be a pain to place. And the restriction to only have these vertically supported would be a problem if we didn't have a glass pane. See, as others have pointed out, a 1x1 glass pane is virtually unnoticeable, meaning we can place our lanterns underneath these and have them somewhat floating, and then use mobs and leads to add a string detail for the new lights, all of which is a nice touch. Number 10. Minecraft offers plenty of variety for its different carpets, but that's all for color, not so much for detail. So that's our cue to think of something new. And while we could get crazy and use map art for detailed rugs, luckily there's a simpler solution with our signs. Since these can overlap with the carpets, we can use our own sign patterns to make different designs in the flooring. And whether you use these for your roads or your rugs, they both can definitely level up a build. Number 11. If you've ever gone for the advancement of balanced diet, you're well aware that Minecraft has plenty of food items. Most of the time, we only show these off in the hotbar or the offhand slot, and I think that's a missed opportunity. So luckily, all it takes is pairing a pressure plate with an item frame to get something of a place setting for our tables. And this detail is definitely a necessity for whatever dining hall you're building next. Number 12. As we've shown, sugarcane can be a valuable tool for decorating, but its limitations can hold it back. So if you're tired of only placing these reeds by water, this might be a better option. See, all it takes is pushing a block into place with a piston to glitch out the plants and leave them standing there just the same. At which point we can swap the water out for lava, or any block for that matter, and successfully avoid another one of Mojang's rules. Number 13. When you're building something as grandiose as a volcano, every detail helps to sell the image. And nothing is more disappointing than a mediocre Mordor. So to kick your lava builds up a notch, this user has a great solution. By using an open fence gate, we can separate our lava from the campfire, but still have the smoke billow out the top. And that, folks, adds a great particle effect to any lava lakes you plan on adding, especially when you partner with hay bales. Number 14. Now, on first glance, arrows might not not seem too helpful for building. And outside of a couple of item frames, you might not see these used. But while that might be true for the regular arrows, these potion variants are the real candidate. See, these tipped arrows have particles along their path, meaning if we build something like this, we can use their effects to make a pretty neat water fountain in the town square. And this proves there's a use for water-breathing arrows after all. Number 15. Even though Minecraft doesn't abide by the rules of gravity, there's still an expectation that your build should. And almost always, if something looks unsupported, it looks out of place. So you won't normally see a set of stairs along the side of your building. But with this simple touch, you can make it happen. And with a simple touch of the subscribe button, you can stay in the loop for more videos with tips and tricks like this one. And funnily enough, by just using trapdoors like so, we can add a convincing railing to the build. And that alone is going to make it look so much better than the competition. Trust me. Number 16. Building over water can be a real hassle. After all, since the liquid lacks a hitbox, it's not exactly easy to build in the ocean. And most of the time, we have to start with a pillar from the lake bed to even place one block. But thankfully, we have lily pads for a better alternative. And using these, we can start from the surface instead of diving deep. And that alone can save us a bunch of time on any and all future pirate builds. Number 17. Bookshelves seem like a nice decoration, but they can very quickly get repetitive. And oftentimes, the texture is just reserved for your level 30 enchantment room. But this might be a way to break up that sameness. Apparently, the loom texture when placed side by side makes for a pretty convincing empty bookshelf block. So while it's a far cry from the variated textures we see in something like vanilla tweaks, I do think it's a step in the right direction. Number 18. As we've talked about in the past, armor stands are entities, and with those properties, we can get some interesting results. For instance, why not overlap their hitboxes and score some extra detail on a build? After all, we can place as much of these in a single space as we want, so that gives us free reign to have our armor stands wear both the head and helmet in the same display, and I think that extra layer can go a long way. Number 19. Sometimes it's the textures you least expect that work out the best, and I think there's something kind of beautiful about that. Like if you were going to build out your wooden floor, you'd probably never think to use beehives. But it turns out these buzzing blocks can work surprisingly well for a tile pattern. So while it might not always be your first pick, I think this goes to show that the unexpected might just work out. All it takes is a different angle. Number 20. By this point, we're all plenty familiar with the grass block texture, which means using this in a build can often feel tired, or at the very least, underwhelming. But fortunately, we've got some blocks in recent years to help break up that monotony. Like why not add a strip of moss to the green in your yard to make it look mowed? Or even just mixing in some green concrete powder here and there can help to texture those paths we've seen hundreds of times before. And believe me, any little bit helps. Number 21. If you look across different cultures, you're bound to see these things pop up. And while these floating lanterns might work well over here, we can actually put them to use in our Minecraft worlds. See, it is true that lanterns can't be placed unsupported, but with the help of trapdoors, we can not only place them in the sky, but also give them the casing to look like real life, giving us results that are bound to give even Tangled some competition. Number 22. Let's face it, making a wall look interesting is none too straightforward, but it's a problem we need to solve to avoid a boring build. So to fix that, we need to use different variants of the same texture. Like, why have just an andesite wall that looks like this, when we could use literal andesite walls to give something of a carved out illusion? And by partnering those together with stair slabs and buttons, we can give that lump of rock a lot more personality than it once had. Number 23. Across the Minecraft community, there's this fascination with building computers inside of your computer game. And while I can't say I understand it, I do think this is a great candidate for that. By using just a candle and a chainmail helmet, we can get a pretty convincing mouse and keyboard setup. And hey, for an added bonus, enchant the helmet for an RGB effect. Or if you're more of a console player, don't sweat it. A black stone wall does the trick for that as well. Number 24. Trees are a great asset to add into any build, but it's easy to feel limited to just the wood types Mojang's added in. Though luckily, all it takes is a bit of thinking to get a better solution. And while we have shown off ancient debris for palm trees in the past, I think these pointed dripstone spikes might just sell the illusion better. And after you've got that, add in a few blocks for coconuts, and you've got something truly worth putting on any beach build. Number 25. If you've taken the time to add vegetation to your base, you're plenty aware that most plants have tall and small variants. But unfortunately, these azalea bushes from the Caves and Cliffs update don't hit that mark. Or they do, but the trees that they make are just so big that you wouldn't use them in any kind of small spot. So in that case, you'll be happy to know that just by adding a moss block on top, we can get the perfect sized plant ready for your new house tour. Number 26. Minecraft has plenty of foodstuffs to go around, but shockingly few can be used for decoration, and I think that's a raw deal. So to solve your stew situation, this composter might be the solution. Now, sure, when it's empty, it doesn't look like much, but fill it up to the brim and put it over a campfire, and now you got a feast fit for the village. And I think it's little details like this that transform your campsite into something worth watching, instead of just a bed and a chest. Number 27. Mojang has gone on the record saying that they don't plan to add any chairs of their own, so when that's the case, we'll have to come up with some of our own. And in my book, this might be the best yet. By using just the bottom half of a bed, we can partner this together with a banner to get something of a sofa chair. And with 16 different colors and even more banner patterns to choose from, there's plenty of room for personal choice here. Number 28. 28. Now, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that most of us don't use structure voids on a daily basis, but it turns out that might be our mistake, because with results like this, that block can clearly be useful for creative building. And I think this example of using rails and structure voids for something of a support beam can be a real help for detail, and it definitely helps this platform look like more than just a floating afterthought. Number 29. When you think of using signs in building, you're probably picturing something like this. But folks, that's only scratching the surface. And it turns out that even without text, these could be an invaluable resource to add. For instance, look at these columns. What would have been simple stacks of blocks becomes something much more upscale when we add signs for detail. And I think when you're able to use something as cheap as a sign to level up your build, it's a no-brainer to add. Number 30. Mineshafts add a classic bit of detail to the Minecraft caves, but while they work when they're 3 blocks wide, pulling off a 2x2 does not seem as possible. Or at least it wouldn't if we didn't have the debug stick. But using one of these, we can fix our fences to only connect along the walls, meaning we fashion a center gap just the same. And to be able to achieve that same effect in a smaller footprint, that's something special, if you ask me. Number 31. As we know, Minecraft doesn't allow for leaves to change the season, which is fine if you want an evergreen, but it means our maple trees and cherry blossoms are out of luck. But thankfully, the coral can help us out. As you can see, by using commands to set up certain coral plants like so, we can create some really beautiful leaves to coat our trees. And while you'll need to set the world so that the coral doesn't decay, I think the results are worth it. Number 32. Space travel is a common goal down here on Earth, and while it's not possible in Minecraft without mods, this might let us pretend that it is. As you'll notice, the end portal texture makes for a convincing starry background, so when you get some of these underneath your floor, you can give the impression that you're stationed above the stars. And I think that's a detail worth using in any future sci-fi maps you plan on making. Number 33. As of the Nether update, we've had the ability to put these chains to use in our world, and while they're great, they do seem a bit dainty. And something tells me these frail things aren't carrying something as big as this anchor. So let's swap in the grindstone instead. As it turns out, just alternating a couple of these in a pattern like so is enough to make a fairly convincing chain, and I'd figure this is much better suited for carrying than just a couple of nuggets on an ingot. Number 34. While ancient debris has many cool uses, I think its lava resistance is particularly interesting, and it allows us to make this new kind of smelting. See, since our items won't melt into the flames, we can pour lava over the top of the super smelter and have our hopper input hidden in the inferno. Then, when you need to smelt for scrap, throw a couple of debris in and accept your lava forged reward, which is much cooler than just some simple furnace. Number 35. Pirate ships are a staple of Minecraft building, but while others would like to focus on the scope and craftsmanship of the boat, I'll personally focus in on the crew. See, for visual reasons, blacksmiths already seem to fit right in as a pirate crew. I mean, the eye patch is a dead giveaway, but what's even cooler is partnering them with a grindstone cannon like this. That way, they interact with it as a workstation, and then they look like they're manning the cannons. And I think that's just great. Number 36. Villagers can be very helpful, but they're not exactly the easiest to direct. And more often than not, our trading halls turn into a peanut gallery. But thankfully, all it takes is a bit of honey to sweeten that deal. See, when placed on top of this, the mobs can't manage to jump out. So from that point, you can tuck them into the desk and make sure they stay there for the entire shift, which might seem mean, but it beats being outside. Number 37. If you don't have World Edit loaded up, then the fill command is the best you got. And let's be honest, it's not the most robust. So we'll need to get creative to get the most out of it. And luckily, this seems to do the trick. See, if you were to build in a regular shape and then fill from layer 2 onwards with carpet, then it will only stack where the pattern is. And then you change the carpet for your block of choice, and now enjoy the time that you've saved. And with that, folks, have a good one, alright?